Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Performance in Psychology taster session. My name is Jordan Diston, and I am part of the external relations team here at the University of Derby. Just to give you a little bit of a rundown of how today will work, we'll start by Phil performing the session, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. With your questions, we have muted you, and that is just to prevent any background noise. So if you do have a question for the session, just pop it into the Q&A box, and Jess, who is also part of the external relations team, will do her very best to ask them to fill in. We'll answer them between us. I will recap this as well at the end of the session, just in case anyone joins a little bit late. But for now, I'm going to pass over to Dr. Philip Clarke, who is going to host the session. Over to you, Phil.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jordan. And thanks for those who are in attendance today or watching back the recording. My name is Dr. Phil Clarke. I'm one of the senior lecturers here at the University of Derby. And I'm going to talk to you about a session that we do deliver on some of our courses on performance psychology. So this is going to be a little bit of a taster session. As you'll see, it's a kind of PowerPoint presentation done in the webinar format, but this will also give those who are interested in the on-campus psychology a bit of a flavor of what our teaching sessions are like. I will caveat in saying that just for those who might be interested in either the online or the on-campus pathway, they are kind of independent, so it's not like you can choose some on the online, some on the on-campus. It's kind of one or the other in terms of that approach for you to consider. Although I will say the majority of our staff kind of teach across both the programs, so you do get the flavor and the same quality regardless of the delivery mode. So let's dive into performance psychology. So performance psychology is a really exciting and innovative new area of psychology. It's probably one of the babies of psychology when we think about health, clinical, forensic, educational, sport and exercise, of which performance psychology falls under, is probably one of the newest. So it's an area which is experiencing a lot of growth, and there's lots of opportunity for those who want to train in it to, I guess, the different areas and domains that you can work in. And I'll share a little bit about that to you today. So in terms of today's session, I'm going to give a bit more of an introduction into who I am and my background, but also kind of some of the work I do as a psychologist. So you get a bit of a flavor for, if you're interested in studying psychology, where could you see yourself working? I'll talk a little bit about what high performance is and the role of psychology within that. So I've been very fortunate in my career, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, to work in a lot of high performance environments, high performance domains in sport, corporate, education, etc. And I'll talk about the role that psychology plays within that. I'm also going to share with you some key lessons from the research and evidence base that help us understand what is high performance, that help us understand how we can take and action these psychological theories and frameworks into your own life. So you might be a student at the moment who's in their final year in their A-levels. Some of the things we'll talk about might help with that. You might be someone who's already in kind of the professional world, and you're looking at transitioning into the world of psychology. Maybe you're doing it for some general CPD. Whatever that might be, some of the principles we're going to talk about today are directly applicable to whatever world you'll find you'll find yourself in. We're going to focus on perception. We're going to talk about interpersonal and bistable perception. So we've got a couple of really cool kind of interactive activities that we're going to be using throughout today's session that will give you an opportunity to have a go with it and have a bit of fun. And then we'll wrap up with a bit of the power of insight and why insight's such an important thing for individuals, for performers to be aware of, because insight gives you the most powerful thing in the world. It gives you choice, which we'll talk about. And then we'll have an opportunity for some questions. What you will see in the Q&A and the chat function is there is a link to Mentimeter, which we'll be using as the interactive tool throughout. It's completely anonymous. So if you just want to click that link, you don't have to answer the question straight away. But if you click the link and have that open, we're going to be doing quite a few little interactive activities throughout today's session that'll give you a chance to engage. And like I say, it is completely anonymous. So in terms of who I am, This was a slide that was shown to me on my very first day as an undergraduate student, and I don't want to say how long ago that was because that's a very scary thought. But back when I was an 18-year-old, this was a slide that was shown to me about the different areas you can find yourself working in as a psychologist. And what's really key is I knew straight away I wanted to be bang in the middle. So you've got teaching, so you might want to either teach at a college, you might want to teach at a school, you might want to teach at a university and become a lecturer. So that's that opportunity to teach psychology. The second field, the bottom left, is to research. So that might be something where you've got a question you really want to answer, you want to understand it, you want to test it in the lab, you want to test it out in the field, you want to understand psychology. And that's what research is. And then the side on the right is consultancy. So actually you want to be out, not necessarily in the trenches, but you want to be out there, you want to be on the front line doing psychology, helping individuals, putting frameworks, practices in place, working with the people, working with the teams, working with the frameworks, working with government insight, whatever that might be. It's the application of psychology. I knew straight away, very early on, that I wanted to be in the middle. So I teach at the University of Derby and have done so for, I think it's coming up on 16 years now. It's research. So I did my PhD, and my research areas fall under three main threads, which is performing under pressure, which is mental health seeking behaviors. And then it's just about performance psychology. How can we make performers more effective? And then we got consultancy, which I'll talk about in just a couple of moments. But this is, again, working across and working with practitioners, with kind of not patients, but clients. So even though I initially trained as a sport, exercise, and performance psychologist, I found myself researching, teaching, and doing consultancy in such a wide variety of different areas, from doing stuff with the police force to doing stuff with national governing bodies, such as RGB, Rugby Players Ireland, working in kind of the construction industry, working in aviation industry, working with the police force, working with retail, working with leaders of multi-million-pound companies. It's dealing with people. And the reason I say this is it's not to brag, it's to show the different worlds you may find yourself applying psychology. But what it's also taught me, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, is you're dealing with people. And from a psychological perspective, we know a lot about people. And this is what I love about watching sport, for example. Sport is like the shop window of human performance. So there's very few worlds that you'll ever find where, say, for example, you were going to write an email and you had 50,000 people behind you as you're writing that email and cheering if you put a full stop or booing if you put an exclamation point. Every press of that button would feel quite anxiety provoking. Well, that's often what happens in sport. You'll have maybe 50, 60,000 people, if you've ever gone to a sporting event, watching a performance and saying, why did they do this? They should have done that. They shouldn't have done that, even if they've never played that sport or performed that sport. So again, understanding the processes in that, there's direct application across every performance domain that we find ourselves in. So it's a really, really fascinating world to be a part of. So let's understand high performance. And I'm not going to give away too much at this moment in time, but I want us to start to think about high performance. Okay. Now, what I have here is the shop window, which I talked about, sport. And then I love this picture on the side. We've almost like the corporate athlete. Now, it's trying to showcase that there is that connection between the two. Now, if we look at the last 25, 30 years of sporting achievement, world records are being broken regular. Performers are going faster, quicker, performing stronger than they ever have. They're being built physically stronger than we ever have. And we start to look at, okay, well, as from a genetic perspective, has the human body evolved that much in the last 30 years? And the answer is no, not really. What we have done and where the differences come is our application of science, our application of research. So starting to understand those quick wins, those fine margins, and putting them into place more. But in other performance domains, there hasn't been that same level of growth. So what performance psychology is how can we learn from the best performance domains in the world? So we can start to look at what are the core common ingredients that we can learn and apply to those different domains. What I've seen in my experience of working over a decade in different performance domains is that often what changes is the environment they perform in. So the nuances, what's expected of them, but our understanding of people is the same. So if we can apply that same approach and those same frameworks that we see in other high performance domains, there's ways in which you can get those performance advantages in your performance context. So what I would like you to do for those who are live in the room is, would you classify yourself as a high performer? Okay, if you just jump onto Menti and answer that question, would it be yes, would it be a no, or would it be it depends? Okay, so we've got 2 people in the Menti. One have answered. I'll give person another moment just to that second person to answer. Do you classify yourself as a high performer? Okay. So the key thing that I love about this question, love it, we've got a no and we have a it depends, okay, is what often we find is if I was to ask this in a room and there was lots of people around, what you probably do is, and you probably did it in your room where you are right now listening to this, went, well, who are high performers in my world? And how do I compare against them? Well, I'm not really a high performer because they are. We're comparing ourselves against others. Now, I didn't ask, are you a high performer in terms of output and in terms of being the best in class at what you do? But we tend to answer that. Well, it depends. I might in one world view it as this way, and in another world I might view it as that. But let's break down high performance, and I'll share what my definition of it is in just a moment. But what I'd like you to do, staying on Menti, what would you say are the key ingredients for being a high performer? So say, for example, that reference point you used for whether you were or you weren't, or it depends, what would you say are the key ingredients? So what makes a high performer? Say, for example, we were going to make either, we're a chef and we're trying to make the perfect dish. If we are trying to make the highest performer, from a psychological perspective, what ingredients would we put in? What would be key ingredients we want to include? The right training. Yeah, definitely agree with that. Consistency. Very good. So actually being consistent with what you're doing, consistent with your effort, consistent with your training, consistent with your pursuit. Motivation. Very good. Passion, confidence, resilience, the right fuel. Love that. Goal orientated. We want to give them knowledge. Okay, good. So we start to see that actually, when we think about it, there's quite a lot of ingredients that goes into it. It can often be quite complicated. And when I've delivered this to big audiences, the same question, you can have maybe 25, 30 different things that come up around these key ingredients that are needed for high performance. But let's use that food analogy, that restaurant analogy. If you went to a restaurant, okay, and you sat there looking at the menu and you seen a dish that had 20 different ingredients on it, would you look at it with, oh, that's amazing, look how much they put in? Or would you look at it and go, oh, that looks really complicated? That looks really difficult. Do I actually want to engage with that? Is that something I want to do? Is that something I'd buy? Oftentimes, definitely in performance, we overcomplicate things massively. Now, other people will have their different approaches and different viewpoints, but I'm going to share with you my viewpoint from the literature and what we've seen from the evidence base around those, what I classify my 3 key ingredients for high performance and how psychology underpins it of. But that first question of how do you compare as a high performer, comparison is the key part. And that's often what tricks us up. So how do I compare against others? How do I compare to others? And where that becomes problematic is you've got no control over who that other person is. So if we're viewing it off that metric, do we only perform to a certain level if we've got the right opponent? Do we only perform to a certain level in terms of our own personal output, depending on who is across from us? And the reason I say that, when we start to look through that lens, does that mean in order to push ourselves, we need to find opponents who are similar to us? And I don't mean opponents just in the sporting context. This could be in anything you're trying to do. Someone you're trying to compete with, whether it's in a job role, a promotion, exams, whatever that might be. So my definition of high performance and what I try and use with performers is High performance is about maximizing the resources and capabilities I currently have at this moment in time. So are you getting the full version of me? Is this the maximum? So for example, if I have 100% of something, when I perform, how much of that 100% am I giving in terms of my performance? And oftentimes it's a lot less than you believe or you're aware of. So actually what we're trying to do is, if we're using the comparison point, so say for example, you're going up against someone who you perceive to be better than you, well then you don't bring that motivation, you don't bring that drive. But what happens if we were like, no, I want you to perform the best version against you? And a great analogy, you'll see this, and I love this as an example, is if you've ever played Super Mario Kart on Nintendo. And what I love about it is if you ever go back and play a level or one of the tracks by yourself in Mario Kart, you have what's Ghost Mario. So Ghost Mario is on the track. And that's the best version that you've done on that track before. That's high performance. How close can I get back to that or better that? Because that's all you've got control over. And what I'm going to do now is share the 3 ingredients that I see and what we've seen from some of the literature about this. And it's going to sound quite simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Okay? Or another way of looking at it, oftentimes some of the stuff we'll talk about, you might go, well, yeah, Phil, that sounds like common sense. But is it? Because if it was common sense, it'd be common practice, but it isn't. So that's where it sounds simple, doesn't mean it's easy to do, because human beings aren't simple. We're complex. And with that complexity means simple things don't necessarily always land. So, very simply, think. The ability to think under pressure. So what I mean by that is, if you ever seen high performers, they're almost able to process what's going on in a really rational, non-emotive fashion. They're able to look at the fact, they're able to look at the factual components in a moment, and they're able to process and decision make off that. That's really important, because in pressure, we're often dealing with high stakes, high urgency. So we need to make a decision now. So have the ability to know where their mind goes to. Are they able to acknowledge their biases? Are they able to acknowledge the frames in which they see the world? And use that to maybe provide a counter viewpoint. And I'm going to share some of that in just a few moments. Okay? Are they able? Do they have that awareness? The second thing, and hopefully you'll all still continue to be doing this on this call, is the ability to breathe. Okay? Now, why this is really important from our nervous system is that when we become panicked, and if you've ever seen someone who's having a panic attack, their breathing is very much out of sorts. Okay? Now, we actually do something quite unique as individuals when we're under pressure, which is very much aligned to when we're fatigued. So our breathing changes. So our normal breath process should be in through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay? But when we're under pressure, what we often do is go. Now, why that's interesting is suddenly there's less oxygen going around the body, which is why when we get nervous, we get tense. Okay? So there's less oxygen going around the body, less blood. But more importantly, when we have that level of tension, you get less. Oh my God! I've had a mind blank. Less. Oh my God! What the energy drinks? The chemical in the energy drinks. It'll come back to me in a moment. But that what that aspect does is that is the fuel source of the brain. So us being able to breathe, what it allows us to do is make sure and help that we're able to think more effectively. Okay. Now that's really, really important, because in essence, those two are connected. How we breathe influences how we think. So it's really, really key that we have that. And the final bit is the ability to connect. The ability to connect. Now, why that's really, really key is our ability to connect with our passions, our strengths, and our teammates, our colleagues. So oftentimes in high pressure scenarios, what we often do is we look at what we don't have. Oh, well, if only I had this, if only I had that, if only I had this. And therefore we're not able to touch back in and connect with our strengths and what we're able to do. I'll just use an example. I've just had a very natural thing that can happen in a presentation where a word has slipped your mind. It's on the tip of your tongue and it won't come out. So I could spend these next few minutes going, well, what is that? What is that? Oh, have I failed? Have I done this? Or I could just go, it's fine. Continue with what you're doing. So right there, being able to connect in with your strengths gives you that possibility to go, right, grand, situations happen, just run with it. It'll come back and we can circle back around to it. So that right there in high pressure scenarios means that regardless of what happens, it's not about whether something happens, it's your response to it. And that's being able to connect back in with what you're trying to do. Think more rationally under pressure and take that a moment to just take a breath. It'll be okay. So let's move into what that means in terms of applying psychology, applying performance psychology. So we're going to definitely keep the Menti open, but we're going to run through a range of different strategies here that's going to show you and the science behind it, how we can go about applying this performance psychology. So this is from research by Hyder and Simmel in 1944. So it's quite one of the, I guess, big studies that was looking at apparent behaviors. Now, why this is really, really important is in this, I'm going to show you a video. And if you have a pen and paper in front of you, what I would love for you to do is have a look at this video and just almost try and make sense of what I'm showing you. So this might be absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. You might say, it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that. I just want you to be able to tell me in a few moments or put into the Menti what it is you see. So let's have a look. Okay, love that. And in typical fashion, in relation to what we were just talking about, when we give ourselves a moment to just take a breath. So the moment I started that video, the word came to my mind that I was searching for, which was glucose. So glucose is in energy drinks. So that is the fuel source that when we're nice and calm and breathing, you get more blood, more oxygen, more glucose around the body, and glucose is the fuel source of the brain. So that is why all three of these are connected. But what I want you to think about is, let's move it on, okay, is in the Menti. Now, again, this is anonymous. What did you see? What did you see? And for those of you who've just joined, I know we've got a couple more in the room. The link is in the chat for you to contribute to this. It's completely anonymous. How would you word what you've seen? How would you describe it? Almost imagine it's like catchphrase, if any of you have ever seen that show, which is say what you see. Conflicting thoughts of the mind, breaking barriers. Nice. Interesting. Anyone else got any thoughts on that? What would you word what you've seen? I'll give it a moment. How would you describe it? How would you describe it? I'm not looking for it. Doesn't have to be a huge essay. Imagine you were sat next to a friend. A battle of shapes until it all fell apart. I like that. So there was a battle. There was an emotion. So a battle means there's conflict. Okay, until it all fell apart. Okay, it's referring to thinking outside the box. Okay, interesting. Like it. Absolutely. Love it. So let's move back in. So the key thing, what's really interesting about this, so from the research that came out from Hyder and Simmel, they identified that most of the common things that came about it was bullying, Romeo and Juliet, where there was two shapes, and I'll play it again as we're talking through so you can see what I mean. Romeo and Juliet, so you had two shapes that weren't necessarily meant to be together, that were trying to be together. Some identified domestic violence, cheating in a relationship, playing hide and seek. So what's really interesting, even about the analogies that was presented back in the Menti, there was a level of intent provided to it. So one being intention to think outside the box. There's an intention of a battle of shapes. What most people probably initially see, and they think, oh no, I'm going to try and understand it a bit more, is no one really, it was very rare that I get someone who just goes, all it was, Phil, was triangle, circle, and sticks moving around on the screen. That was it. There's almost an element of intent to it. We're trying to understand. Now, that's really important for us to be aware of when it comes to performance, particularly when we're working with individuals, is what influences and shapes the way we see the world? Well, what are those things that are reference points for how we make sense of things? That almost, what's interesting is some people put like the big triangle's angry, the little triangle and the circle were scared and ran away. You're almost creating and placing emotions and intent on inanimate objects, because that's how us as human beings make sense of the world. Now, the things that can influence that could be anything from your culture, your upbringing, your religion, your friendship groups, your early life experiences, all of those things, your beliefs, your values, all of those shape and influence the way in which we see the world. Okay. And once you're able to understand that and appreciate that, you start to see that if you imagine that these are different lenses that are different filters, everyone will have different filters. Everyone will have different glasses for how they see and perceive the same situation. So in your own personal life, have you ever had it where you've seen something happen and you're like, no, that seems fine. And then somebody else is almost getting annoyed or frustrated, or someone else has gotten really sad about the exact same thing, because you don't know what information they're picking up on. And based off their experiences and the way in which they see the world and their inner value markers and beliefs, you don't know what that same information, what story that's telling them. Which is where the second part comes in. And this is from an old Chinese parable, which is about the six blind scientists and the elephants. And what I really like about this is the different angles, the different perspectives of each scientist will change how they potentially perceive what the elephant is. Now, obviously, this isn't an experiment I'd recommend anyone doing, because it's quite interesting to go, would you have a blind scientist going up against the ladder on an elephant? But what it's highlighting is the trunk. Is it a snake? The tusks, is it a spear? The ears, is it a fan? The stomach, is it a wall? The legs, is it a tree? The tail, is it a rope? And all that highlights is that perspective plays a massive part. And we're going to have a little go at that in these next couple of activities. What I want you to do is I'm going to show you a picture. And in that picture, all I want you to worry about is the first thing that you see. You might see multiple things, and that's okay. I'll explain why I'm doing the first thing in just a few moments, but I want you to have a look at the first thing. So, there it is. Make a note of what's the first thing you see, and we're gonna vote on it in Menti. Okay, and this came from the 19th century. American psychologist penned this, and some of you who are interested or read into psychology or studied psychology before might have seen some of these before. So what I want you to do is, what did you see first? Unsure? Was it a duck or was it a rabbit? Okay, we've got 2 ducks. What about the other 2 in the Menti? 3 ducks. Now, for some of you, this might be the first time that you've seen, for those of you who've seen the duck, then seen the rabbit. And I'm going to scroll back just so you can see it. Now, what you'll see there is you can see the duck, but do you see the rabbit? Can you see the alternate perspective? So, for example, those who see the duck, what you see as the beak is the rabbit's ears. The eye is the same. It's the duck eye and the rabbit eye. But what is the back of, was the back of the head of the duck is actually the mouth of the rabbit. So they're looking in different ways. Now, what's really interesting about this is you do not see a weird duck rabbit. You have to make a split-second choice of, am I seeing a duck or am I seeing a rabbit? And that insight and that perspective, you have insight. You now have choice. You have the most powerful thing any performer can have in the world, which is choice. But we sometimes have to take a moment to try and spot it. We're going to up the difficulty. With this, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? How would you describe it? Okay. How would you describe it? So what we're going to do is we're going to move on and get you to vote. So would you say you seen an older lady first? Would you say you seen a younger lady? Or did you see something else? Did you see something else? Interesting. So we had a big split between older lady and younger lady. Now the question I want you to consider, do you see both? So I'll go back, so it gives you a chance to see it. Oh, do you see both? And if you can, comment in the chat or in the Q&A function. Do you see both? Are you able to see both? This one I'm just really interested in. I should also say, this is not a measure of intelligence. So if you can't see it, that's completely fine. No issues whatsoever. Okay, no issues whatsoever. So if in the chat function, 10 all, you're able to let me know if we can see both. But the key thing about this is, if you're able to, or if you haven't yet, I'll try and explain it just so for those who are listening, is on the young lady's looking out this way. Okay, that's her eyelash. That's the young lady's nose. That's kind of her facial structure, her cheek. And this is going all the way around to the side of her head as she's looking away. Okay, it looks like she's wearing a necklace with a thrall around her neck. And that's her hair with some form of hat or shawl on her head. Now, almost if we take a step back, this is where the old lady is. So for the young lady, this is her ear. For the older lady, that's her eye. This now becomes her nose, the older lady's nose. Okay, there's the nose bit. And what was the necklace on the younger lady is the mouth of the older lady. So it's still the shawl around the neck that's being worn by both women. But what it is this is an older lady looking down. So it looks like she's looking down this way. So what is the eye on the younger lady is also the eye on the older lady. Now, hopefully through that description, you've had your aha moment. So you've seen both. Ah, okay, I can see it. And obviously because I'm not interacting directly and seeing what you see, hopefully you've had that. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've had that aha moment, so you're able to switch between the two. But the reason why that's so important in pressure and in performance, and the reason I said the first thing you see, is oftentimes when we're making decisions and judgments, we go off our first viewpoint. Now, sometimes that first viewpoint might not be the right one. So if we ever want to make a split decision, we want to make sure we get as much information as we can before we need to jump, before we need to make that decision. Okay. And I'm going to show you a more complicated one. So this is interpersonal perception. We're now going to show you bistable perception. Okay. Now what I love about this is I want you to have a look at that spinning silhouette. Okay. Now this silhouette is something that's really, really fun and interesting. What I love about it particularly is you will either see it going clockwise or counterclockwise. It'll be going a certain direction. Now, if I was to tell you, just like the other one, where there was a duck and a rabbit or an older lady and a young lady in the same frame, you'd probably be a bit thrown to go, Phil, there's no way that there's both happening in this same one. And fair, because we're talking about two extremes of a continuum. How can something be going clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time? It's a fair point. I understand it. And this is what is an example of bistable perception. Okay. Now I'm going to get you to see, what did you see first? Okay. And if you've seen both, great. But I want to be interested on what people seen. So one clockwise, one both. What about the other three that are in Menti? Clockwise, counterclockwise, or did you see both? And again, it's completely anonymous. Just go with what your gut's telling you. What did you see? Was that silhouette going clockwise, counterclockwise, or both? So say, for example, we were in this scenario, okay? We've had four out of 5 people in the room. Say, for example, we were in a decision-making situation. And okay, brilliant. So the person who's both, just for argument's sake, I'm going to say is seeing a counter. Say, for example, they're in a room where 4 people are going, well, it's obviously going clockwise, right? And you're sat there going, no, I see it the other way. Now, oftentimes you'd either feel too shy to address that, Or they'd go, well, no, it's obvious. Look, there's no way that's going the opposite way. I don't know what you're seeing, but we're right. There's the majority of us in that. That's where sometimes we rush to an assumption because of time, pressure, all of that, and go, well, look, that's the obvious information. Now, I'm going to show you how you can see it both ways, which I love this. Try not to look at all of these three at the same time because it can just a little bit like, oh, wow. I want you to look at the left and the middle first. Okay, let's bring it up. So if you look at the left and the middle first, okay, if you put your hand out like I'm doing in front of it and look at the left and the middle, you might go, oh, look, that's going one direction. Okay. And then if you block the left side and look at the right in the middle, suddenly the middle silhouette is going the same way. So suddenly now that's middle silhouette. All I've done is slowed it down and give you some reference points to help you see that now, if I want to, I can change that middle silhouette's direction purely based on adding a new layer of information. Now, what I love about this is probably the most accurate representation of what happens in life. Because life isn't or in performance, should I say, it isn't always as simple as, oh, well, that's a duck, but you could also look at it as a rabbit. It's often a lot more nuanced than that, where we have these kind of extreme end viewpoints that we're almost raised to think right and wrong, yes and no, black and white, this and that. It's very extreme in terms of differentiating based off, well, there's no way that color is white or black. Can't be a mix of the both. So we're taught to see it in two different viewpoints. But actually, I just showed you a scenario where we've got clockwise and counterclockwise, and both of them are correct. So it's not like I'm right, you're wrong. It's we're both right. Now, when you can start to do that in a performance context, also within a team, but if you're working individually, is there a different way that I can see this? If you do that from a psychological perspective, you get one of, like I've said a couple of times throughout this, you get the most powerful thing any individual could ever ask for. You get insight. And insight provides choice. And in choice, then you're able to make better decisions. And you're then able to perform in a far more effective way, which ties back into right back when we were talking about human performance and the three key ingredients. Okay, both points we've talked about there today is all about how we think. So that very first one, if we're able to tap into that, that's where we can start to use psychological theory and understanding to help us understand how we can approach performance in any facet, whether that's a driving test you've got coming up, whether it's an exam, a job interview, applying for university, whatever that might be, where it requires you to perform. Is there another way I can see this? Is there something that I'm scared of that I could potentially turn into an opportunity? So a really great example of it is confidence and courage is something everyone's after. I want to be more courageous. I want to be more confident. But in order to test that, you need something you're afraid of to test your courage. So I can look at it and go, I don't want to touch that because that's going to make me scared. That's one way of looking at it. Or the other way could be, here's an opportunity for me to test my courage. So suddenly it's a different viewpoint altogether of the exact same situation, all by how you look at it. So that is an example of what a session at the University of Derby can look like in both an online or an on-campus facet, interactive, engaging, applicable. And what I'm going to do now is I'll leave my contact details if anyone does want to get in touch. But thank you very much for listening today. And we will open it up to, we've got about 20 minutes or so left for anyone that does have any questions. So I will leave my slides up on the screen. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it.
Super, thanks, Phil. That was really informative. I really enjoyed watching that. I hope everyone else did too. And we've had a few questions come in prior to the event. Some of them are for online and some of them are for on campus. I can see that Sophie's joined us. So Sophie, I'll pop you on the screen with Phil as well, just in case there's any that come in for you. So the first one is, are there any opportunities for students to contribute to research with academics with online courses?
Yeah, great question. And also I see some people have commented in the Q&A about they can't see the old lady, they could see both. So that's brilliant. Hopefully hopefully that gives you a new perspective on things. So yes, research and the chance to be involved with research. So yes, when we talk about being involved with research, there is a number of aspects. So one is actually being involved as a participant and having a go at seeing how studies are designed, developed, and have a go from that lens. We do offer opportunities for some of our students to potentially be involved in some of staff research projects, whether that's as a research assistant, whether that's through kind of work placement or work opportunities. So they get an idea and an opportunity to be involved in that, but also part of our course curriculum. We build and embed research development skills so students are able to engage in research to develop those skills just like they would if they were kind of within an on-campus provision. And Sophie, if you anything you'd add to that?
Yes, I was just going to add that historically for our students in their second year of study, or the equivalent, which might be your third or fourth year if you're studying online across 6 years, we do usually offer what's called the Undergraduate Research Scholarship Scheme, which is where you can work with a member of staff either on a project of your own design that staff support you with, or a staff member might advertise out for a project and work as a research assistant, and that role is paid and does come with a conference and dissemination opportunities. It's equally an opportunity for campus-based students that we offered historically for the last few years. I don't know where we're at for this academic year right now, but we do try and encourage student engagement with research as much as possible. It could be through a volunteer research assistant role. As I said, we do have some paid opportunities. There are also a number of research assistant opportunities that get advertised more formally. So there are a number of ways you can get involved as a student in research and as a participant, as Phil mentioned.
And what I'd just add on that, just to show the importance of it, that for any student, engaging in those opportunities can be immensely rewarding in terms of your knowledge and development and for your CV. But just on a personal level, I probably wouldn't be stood here today delivering if I hadn't got involved in one of those student opportunities that Sophie was mentioning. So my PhD actually came off the back of me in my second year of university doing one of those research projects that staff offer. It was on an area that I didn't really know a huge amount about, and then suddenly that's turned into my expertise, what I now go and do a lot of my consultancy work on, still do a lot of my research and supervised PhD students on, all because I said yes to a project when I was 19. So again, just shows the importance of getting involved in that. So we do provide a lot of those opportunities here.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what are the steps to become a chartered psychologist?
Ooh, great question. Do you want to answer, Soph?
Yes, the steps are different depending on who you are, what your background is. But in general, the number one step everyone needs to get to become a chartered psychologist within the UK is what's known as graduate basis for chartered membership. You can get that by completing an accredited undergraduate course or conversion course, which we offer both. The BSc Psychology Campus Online and Campus and Online are both BPS accredited. The MSc Psychology Online is a conversion course, which is also BPS accredited, and successful completion of any of those programs will give you graduate basis for chartered membership, which is the first step to becoming a chartered psychologist. The next step depends on what kind of psychologist you want to be, and you will get plenty of support both on campus and online through personal academic tutors, through our careers service, which all students can get access to, and through our skills and careers modules, as well as it being built into the program throughout. The next step generally is potentially some sort of master's degree for some routes. If you wanted to be a health psychologist, a sport and exercise psychologist, or a forensic psychologist, for example. Or if you wanted to move into educational psychology or clinical psychology, the next step would be a professional doctorate in those areas. So it does depend on which way you want to go. There are some alternatives as well if you're not interested in any of those, what we call practitioner roles. But if you're interested in working in cognitive psychology or in research, you can still be a chartered psychologist, but your route might look like a MSc PhD. And then you can register with the BPS as a chartered psychologist. So psychology is one of those areas where there are plenty of routes to progress through and really follow your area of interest and focus. If you want to work with patients or clients, then you would need to follow a more prescribed process within the UK. But again, there's still a lot of flexibility around it, and we're very experienced both on campus and online in supporting students, even students that aren't within the UK that are living globally, kind of trying to figure out what that looks like for them in the country they plan to work within.
And what you will, that taken back to that very first slide around teaching, consultancy and research, you'll have individuals who are chartered psychologists in all three of those areas. So it's just understanding, like Sophie said, what you want to do work-wise, and then whether it's the chartered psychologist with the BPS or whether actually you want to do more practice, client-facing work, then it's the getting onto the HCPC register as being a registered practitioner psychologist. So those terms are protected by the Healthcare Professions Council, and that is why it's important you go through those different levels of training Sophie has just discussed in order for you to get onto that register so you can practice effectively, legally and ethically.
Great, thank you. There's also another question here linked to the BPS, so I'll ask this one next. Do students get free BPS membership? And if so, what does this mean?
So students on any undergraduate or conversion program within their first year are entitled to register for free BPS membership for a year. Following that, it's up to you whether you want to continue that subscription at your own cost. So students, yes, you can get free BPS membership, but it is for that first year. The thing with the membership, which often gets confused with the accreditation, is that the programs are accredited. You can opt in to be a BPS member or not. What the membership gives you is a chance to get access to journals, articles, discounted conferences, psychology updates, information gets sent through newsletters about what's happening in psychology, if there's any consultations going on that you could contribute to. So the BPS membership is a membership like a gym membership. There are resources there, and you can opt in to access those resources and make use of them or not. The program will always, in this cohort, be accredited. So the accreditation isn't based on anything you do as a student. It's based on the quality of the program that we provide as academics and as a program team.
Deepa, thank you. Another question here is, do you have any guest lectures, and can you give examples? And can you also just say whether they're available to online and on campus or both, please? Thank you.
Yes, of course. We have a lot of guest lectures for both online and campus. Sometimes there is a little bit of variety between what's offered between the two. Where we can, we'll try to ensure that guest speakers deliver to both online and campus. However, we tend to use a model where if you're delivering to online, it's in a format like this. We don't tend to record somebody just delivering a lecture on campus and then send that out, unless that's our only option to do so. We really like to ensure that where we've got guest speakers, they're delivering to the audience they have, campus or online, and ensuring that those interactions and activities match. The guest speakers we have are quite varied. We do tend to have a lot of careers guest speakers, but from careers in psychology and outside of psychology. Recent examples are people that work in the Office for National Statistics as data analysts. We have CBT practitioners. We have psychology wellbeing practitioners. We have people who are doing private practice, and we have the core psychology pathways, people from educational, people from health coming in to talk. But we are aware that not everybody that does a psychology degree wants to continue on to be a psychologist. They want to have a degree that has a really good underpinning of research skills, communication skills, and those various transferable skills you'll get as well. So we do try to bring in people that have moved on to careers outside of psychology, but that have a psychology underpinning as well as the traditional. So yes, both online and campus students get access to a lot of guest lectures. What that looks like will depend on that person's availability, and also what the program needs are, because the cohorts can be different each year. So we try to deliver according to who's studying rather than just a generic delivery that might not be applicable to the students.
Great, thanks again. So the has been a question about facilities. I imagine this is for on campus. So what facilities will we get to use as a student at Derby?
Great question. So facilities also does count for online as well. At Derby, you have a really wide range of access to facilities. We'll start with the general facilities that all students can access. Things such as our careers and employment agency, our central library services, student support services who take care of wellbeing support and other areas. We have a financial support service who can give you financial advice. When you're starting out as a student, that can sometimes, you suddenly get a lot of money and it's, how can I manage this? So we have a lot of central services that all students can access online or campus. In terms of facilities, I'm assuming the questions may be more related to lab-based facilities. So we do try to engage with technical equipment with students, both online and on campus. The way we do it differs slightly, as you can imagine. But students might be introduced to things such as how to take heart rate, how to take blood pressure. They might have introductions to equipment that can be eye trackers. They might have an introduction to the cold presser. So we do have a variety of psychological equipment that students will either become familiar with through sessions, depending on how much we can allow students to use them, or what you can use in your actual research. All students, online or campus, can design research projects that use equipment. So campus students, online students can come to campus and utilise our eye tracking equipment or utilise some of the lab space as well. So those opportunities are open to everybody. What we try to do is build them into the programme. So if you were doing a biological module, that might be where you go and do something around heart rate or blood pressure. If you were doing a module around cognition, you might be more likely to use our our psychological software that helps to look at things about how we process information. It can track your eyesight. You can do various things. So we have quite a bit of psychological equipment. How much you use it in your own research projects is up to you. But in terms of built within the module, we try to build it in so that it's relevant to the teaching that you have. I'm hoping that I've answered the question. But let me know if there was a different interpretation.
No, I think that's exactly what we're looking for. Thank you. I have another question here as well about hands-on experience, and if people can get involved with things like, say, feel like sports clubs at the university and work with them alongside or people in industry and gain experience that way, please.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll take it for the campus and then for the online. For the campus program, students do have work experience that they need to complete. There is also the option to take additional placement time within the campus program where you can really get that experience, that hands-on experience. Whether you do that or not, the placement, it is up to you as a student. Not all students take the placement year, but the work experience is for every student on campus. You will all be required to do 30 hours of work experience. That's often one of the ways students get involved in research is they do work experience with staff as a research assistant. So going back to that earlier question, in terms of online, getting that hands-on experience, you will be doing, and it's the same for campus, you will be doing your own research projects. It is a requirement from the VPS for accredited programs. What we do at Derby for both campus and online is for your final research project, we do allow you quite a bit of choice with what that project is in. And for online students, this is often an opportunity to engage with your workplaces or engage with wider industry to do those projects. So there's several different ways that you can engage in industry or get hands-on experience. Some of it's within our core teaching. You will need to do research projects. Some of it's within the work experience week on campus or a placement year on campus if you select that. And some of it can be more around your own passion. We've had students who have done research projects with the military. We've had students that have done research projects in the NHS online. So there's a lot of variety. And really it's about what you want that to look like.
And there is opportunities even with some of the offerings at the university. So I'm the head of the sports psychology provision within Team Derby. So that's all the sporting branch. So I look after the psychological provision and support to all of our student athletes. And I have quite a few students from undergrad, masters, those doing their training, and then myself as qualified. So you get an opportunity to shadow those above you. So if you're in an undergrad, you could get an opportunity to shadow one of the master's students, and equally the master's students are able to shadow those in their official kind of stage 2 training or set part training with cases, which is that final bit of training before they become qualified. So you get an opportunity to learn. So there's definitely opportunity within different industries, but that's just an example of one where students are actively doing it with me, for example. And yeah, lots of sports clubs and lots of opportunities to engage in those types of opportunities.
Eva, thank you. I think we've got time for another quick one, so I'll just make this one the last. Then I'll hand back to you, Phil, to do a final sign off. So what opportunities are there for students to get involved in roles such as programme reps?
Yes, we love it if you got involved in roles such as programme reps. So lots of opportunities to get involved in things such as being a student representative. Again, how much you engage with that or how much of that role you take on, that's always for discussion. We know that life can happen, so sometimes it can feel quite a big commitment, but just keeping that communication open with staff is the key. So we do have student representative roles both on campus and online. There are other ways of getting involved with the programme in terms of just being able to give feedback. We've had students form journal reading groups before, or as part of the Psychological Society, which is also on campus, and students online can join that. Just again, it's what that looks like might be slightly different, but the opportunity is there. So in those ways, you can really make of it what you want. I'd say that Derby listen to our students, and if there's something you can see and you're like, I'd really love to do this, or this should be happening, then we will listen to you and work with you to see what that looks like. Sometimes that's via the student reps, sometimes it's a brand new idea, but we really welcome collaborative engagement because it's your programme as well as ours. So we want it to be the best it can be and ensure that you're enjoying all of it as well.
Brilliant. So that was the last question, Jess. Yeah.
So I think that's the last one we've got time for today. Thanks, Phil.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you everyone for coming along to this session. Hopefully you found it useful. There is contact details. If you do have any questions that you want to send, please do forward it across to me. I'll do my best to answer. And if not, I'll be able to get the right person to provide the detail or information for you. But thanks for attending, and hopefully see you soon.